part 4 of the John Deere round fender series. In this video, I'm going to talk primarily about serial numbers, probably for the next approximately 11-12 minutes. And I'll probably split this up in actually two presentations. So serial numbers can be somewhat mystifying on the round fenders because there are 4 different types of serial tags that are on these tractors. Generally can be pretty confusing if you are not sure what you're looking at. So it's really helpful, particularly if somebody's telling you, oh, I've got a 1963 John Deere, you really need to come buy it because they're worth a lot of money, which 1963s are. So this video should hopefully help you navigate the serial tags. So this is public information. You can go out and find it. So this is the serial number range for the tractors. I actually pulled these numbers out of a technical manual that I have that was published in 1967. So it covers all of the round fenders. So in 1963, tractors ran up to the 3550 serial number. They started at 2551. The reason I do not have that listed is because that is not the way it is listed in the book. But we do know, in fact, that these tractors for the 110s in 1963, the serial numbers started at 2,551. In 1964, we went from 3551 to 15,000. In 1965, we went from 15,001 all the way up to 40,000. And then in 1966, we went from 40,000 to 65,000. We also added the 112 in 1966, of which only 999 tractors were made. So that went from 2551 to 3550. And you can see how that relates to the 1963 machines. And then in 1967, the 110s carried a serial number from 65,000 all the way up to 100,000. And then the 112s carried the 3551 all the way up to 100,000. Now, one of the most common questions that I'm asked is, well, how many tractors do they actually make? Because nobody really knows. I have never talked to anyone that has actual production numbers. Deere probably does somewhere. I know some people have done a really, really good job at tracking 63 and 66 112s because they are so rare. But overall, there's no definitive exact production numbers for these tractors. Now, they did not use all of the serial numbers. So way back in 2015, that's 2 years ago, over 2 years ago now, I think it was July 2015, I got on Weekend Freedom Machines, and I'll show you what I did. So using the Weekend Freedom Machines registry, I actually spent an evening, actually 2 evenings, I think, digging through the registry, looking at approximate the registrations per year and where the serial number stopped, and coming up with how many tractors were produced. So we know that the 1,000 tractors were built in 1963. But if we do the math of 15,000 subtracted from 3551, we come up with 11,500, which very well may have been 11,500 produced, but I'm guessing it's going to be closer to 11,000. Meanwhile, if we do 40,000 subtracted 15,001, we come up with 25,000. 25,000 tractors, that's a lot of tractors, and also the same for 1966 for the 110s. So did they really make all those tractors? Well, here are some approximate production numbers that I've come up with. You can look through them there. I mean, 1,000, 11,000, 20,000, 25,000, 19,000, and 15,500 for the 112. So let's look at the actual registrations. So these are actually the registered serial numbers that exist in the weekend, or existed. I haven't looked in the last year or so to see if any more have been added, but what I have is the range of registrations that Weekend Freedom Machines had on their website. Now, this was prior to, I believe it was prior to the update of the Weekend Freedom Machines website. So like I said, this is all freely public information. I'm just kind of putting it in a different shape and form here. So the range is registered. Obviously, we know that all 1,000 were produced in 1963. But then we see that, particularly when it gets to 1967, we only have a serial number of 83,539. So that means we would be missing, almost 17,000 machines if we truly went to serial number 100,000. So I'm guessing Deere cut it off at 100,000 just because it was simple for introduction to the square fender. Now you can see for the most part, really 1965 or 1966 stands out because it carries us pretty close to 65,000. So it could very well be there's tractor serial number 84,999. But then in 1965, the serial numbers were only registered so far to 34,315. So that means that there's approximately 5,500 machines that are not accounted for on a serial number database. That's pretty impressive, in my opinion. That you'd think over time that many machines missing somebody would have come up with at least one. So that's how I come up with the production numbers and the serial numbers. So you can go back and look at that part of the video if you would like. But now we're going to work on demystifying serial number tags. So these are the 4 different types of serial tags that you would see on a round fender. So in the upper left-hand corner, we have what would be on a 1963 or 1964 machine. In the lower left-hand corner, we have what would be on a 1965 machine. And in the lower right-hand corner, we have what would be on a 1966 110 or 112. And in the upper right-hand corner, we have what would be on a 1967 110 and 112. So 1963 and 1964 tags covered up to serial number 15,000. There's only going to be 2 bits of information on the tag. It's going to be model identification, which will only say 110, and then there will also be a 4 or 5-digit serial number. So in this case, it's serial number 4080, so it's a 1964 110. In 1965, they added A in there. I'm not really sure why A prefix is there. Somebody probably knows, but nobody's ever told me. That's a really good way to identify 1965. It's always going to have A in front of the serial number. Plus, it runs from 15,000 to 40,000. And you saw previously that we've only been able to track up to serial number 34,000. 1966 is where things get a little bit more complicated because this is at the point that Deere added the hydraulic lift. Also, they went to what we now call a type code. So the serial tags got a little bit more involved. So in this case, on this serial tag, we're looking at SNT 1032-058928M. All right, and so I actually have everything you need to decipher that. We'll go over some of these codes here in a little bit. So serial number tag, pretty easy to understand. It would either be a 10 or a 12 were the next 2 numbers. That would be either a 110 or a 112. And then the tire designation, so it'd be 1, 2, 3, or 4. That covers the tire designation. The tire designation, basically, GT1 and GT2 would be what a lot of people refer to as the narrow rims. GT1 would be the all-purpose narrows, and GT2 would be the traction, so the lug type tires on the rear. These would be the front would be the 484s by 8, and the rear would be the 612s. The GT3 and GT4, those are known as the high flotation tires, and that would be the 16650 by 8s up front and the 812s in the rear. 3 would be the turf type tires, and then 4 would be the flotation or the traction type tires, so the ag lug tires. After the tire designation, we come to hydraulic lift or manual lift, so either 1 or 2. And then we have the serial number, and then the factory suffix, which is Horicon. So all 110s and 112s will have M as the Horicon number or the letter. In 1967, they changed the serial tag again, mostly from the standpoint of we now have, instead of S and T, we just have a T. We have a 1 and a 2 instead of a 10 and a 12, mostly from the standpoint of 110, 112 tractors, so on and so forth. And then we have an identification code. Now that identification code, what we can now call a type code, which I will go over type codes eventually in some other video. I have a big whole sheet of type codes. There were, I'm sitting here trying to count, and there were a heap of type codes, basically 300 all the way through 317. I'll put those in the next video because this one's already getting kind of long. And then after the type code, you had the serial number, and then once again the M for the factory suffix of Horicon. So that's kind of a primer of John Deere serial tags, production numbers, stuff like that. And so in the next video, we'll actually go in and look at pictures of type codes, different tractors, stuff like that. That video may actually take me a decent while to put together, probably a couple weeks, because I'm going to try to get some pictures of, narrow wheels, original tires, stuff like that. So anyway, hopefully this video was just as informative as the first couple. Got some really good comments on those, and I will keep them coming. Thanks for watching.